Hi, everyone. Dom Famularo here again, and again. This is so fantastic as I come by here for Vader and have the chance of being able to bring to you these incredibly great artists. And today is another gem. I talk about just a person that is involved in all aspects and who was to be destined to be in the music industry because of his wonderful history. So, I mean, this is absolutely incredible. So I want to do a little intro of who our guest is here. Check this out. Trevor Lawrence Jr. was literally born into the music business. Both his parents were in Stevie Wonder's band, and between them, the credits also included the Supremes, Ringo Starr, Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, Etta James, Marvin Gaye, just to name a few. Trevor has been a force within himself in the music industry for decades. A drummer since 2 years old, he's also a composer, producer, and professor that continually works with the likes of Dr. Dre, Herbie Hancock, Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey, Eminem, Ed Sheeran, and countless others. This guy is so busy, from gold, platinum, and multi-platinum albums to winning Grammy, Emmy, BET, American Music, Billboard, and Soul Train Awards, to playing the biggest stages, television shows. Trevor literally has done it all and is continuing to do it at such a high level. He's leaving just in a few days to go out and play it with Herbie Hancock. So joining us from LA, please bring in Trevor Lawrence Jr.
Yo, Tom, hey, how are you, man? What's going on?
Fantastic, man. Thanks so much for joining us, Trevor. You really have this incredible wave that you've created that from when you were born, this wave started, and now it's a tsunami of intensity of what you've created at many aspects of the music industry. As a performer, as a music producer, as a composer, there's a lot that you're doing, which is really incredible.
Thank you. I love that intro. Thank you for that incredible intro. Man, for some reason, I've never wanted to be in a box. And, our instrument often, we're the object of ridicule, and, we're not musicians and all these other things. And, there definitely have been people I can look up to. I mean, a lot of people don't know, in this generation, like the incredible production contribution that Nard and Michael Walden had made. And he's a real incredible, real fusion drummer from back in the 70s playing Mahavishnu. So you didn't have to compromise being a real musician of a certain level and being commercially successful or trying to, be on that other side. So that's what I looked up to. Wasn't just trying to play fast and just be that guy. That's great, but I feel like you reach the masses, when you write a song that everyone can gravitate towards.
But you had this influence from your parents.
Yeah. That's where even my grandfather had a Grammy. So the year I was born, as a matter of fact, he was in a gospel group called the Dixie Hummingbirds, where he's the lead singer, and he had a song with Paul Simon, called Love Me Like a Rock, and they won a Grammy in 1974. And that was my guy. Like, Pop was my big influence for a lot of things in my life. So, it's true. I mean, that's what I saw, right? From grandfather, father, mother, aunt, cousins. We just have a lot of music in our family. And it's just been a blessing to be able to really make that a career and raise my own family doing nothing but music. So, that's really the true success, is being able to wake up and do something I love, as a job. I mean, it doesn't feel like a job, but do something I love. And I'm sure you share that same feeling.
It's pretty amazing when you think about that. We are blessed to be able to do what we love doing, living our passion, but you have to kind of work really hard at it, and you've got to be able to commit yourself 100% as you have done. So just talk about your parents, the influence of your parents. They were actively involved with Stevie Wonder's band and many other bands. Mm-hmm. What was that like growing up, where you were hearing them performing and recordings?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up right in the beginning. Like by the time I was a teenager was right when the studio thing was really starting to pop off at people's homes, and having a home studio and the technology was really advancing. So on my dad's side, I saw that, and which obviously was what I got into. At the same moment, hip hop was starting to really crack. So, I was getting into that around that period. So that kind of is responsible for my tech side and me knowing that side. And then with my mom, you know, she sang background for a lot of people after she was a Supreme. And, you know, just seeing her go on tour, that was a thing that I always wanted to do. You know, I remember when I said to myself, one day somebody's going to send a ticket for me to go play music. Like that was a goal at one point in my life. Like, wow, one day I'm going to actually get a plane ticket to go be able to play music, you know? So that was, you know, those were early influences for sure. My dad, I saw him he was a player, you know, playing sax on so many records with Stevie, all the sax on Trouble Man with Marvin Gaye, you know, but was a producer and writer, you know, with I'm So Excited and all the songs that he did in the 80s. So that kind of let me know that you can do both. By the time it got with me, with hip hop, I remember I went to a music school. So a lot of people were doing one or the other. And it was kind of weird when you said you wanted to be a producer if you were a drummer. So I remember a period where I had to build up myself as a drummer. And then I remember having to almost renounce that. And, oh no, I'm a producer now. So you can just get the respect that people, you know, let people even decide to even give you a shot in that world. So, you know, my parents were the early influence and my grandfather as well. And, you know, from there, man, it's just been a journey, you know, of learning what works and what doesn't work. So, you know, but it's all been a blessing because I've never done anything but music ever, you know, never.
What's amazing about it is that you really kind of help push you open the door and you push this force forward that you could be a drummer and you can be a producer and you can compose, and you kind of widened the image of what people saw as drummers. You really helped push that, you know, now well into the 21st century.
No, I appreciate that. And that was absolutely a goal because I was kind of tired of us, you know, we drummers being marginalized. You know, I've spoken to some of the greats, you know, and I won't say who, but I mean, man, there's some stories where we've just been so many years, our ideas taken, and then it's just, you get your session payment and that's it. But everything was predicated on something that we inspired, right? So I was tired of seeing that and us as drummers getting treated like, you know, just take our ideas taken from us. So I always felt like if I get an opportunity, you know, I want to be able to do both. So to this day, there are many, many, many records that I play on, but I'm also a writer or producer on, or, you know, and I don't think, you know, because the funny thing is when it's a guitar player or a keyboard player or even a DJ, nobody, it's not far-fetched at all. But when it's a drummer, it's like, oh, I didn't know that you write, or it's still a little weird. You know what I'm saying? So imagine if Clyde Stubblefield would have had publishing on Funky Drummer. I mean, listen. It has to evolve, right? And some, unfortunately, right now, so many of this generation is about look at me play drums fast. They don't care about anything else or anyone else. So that's where I'm a little different. I care about the culture and the future of this genre and this us as drummers and having those opportunities, right? So I want to inspire and try to open that up so it can continue rather than just be concerned with myself.
Boy, that is such a huge undertaking that you have definitely accomplished. What's amazing is I had the chance of interviewing Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo Starks several months before they passed away, and we spoke about that.
Yeah.
About that, you know, all that they had done with James Brown, the great grooves, the pocket that they played. You know, they were composers.
Yo, for sure, man.
All right, and people think of drumming as, well, because you can't copyright a rhythm that, you know, you can't really, but, you know, but this has to be opened up, and you've done just that, man. You've opened up the door, but, you know, but you started playing drums at 2.
Right.
So you were already kind of, you know, drumming was just kind of like a way of life, just like walking for you.
Yeah. I remember I just found one of my Remo pads, man, from back then with the big crown and the big, you know, and I mean the little tiny one, actually. Yeah. They reversed the big ones now. And you know, that's all I did, man. I mean, my mom has the stories of, you know, when she first realized it wasn't a random thing, you know, hitting some rhythms where it was repetitive. So they got me a practice pad kit, and I rocked that till I was about, I had that till I was about 13. So even my first lessons were all on a practice pad kit with one cymbal, one hi-hat, right? You know, and, you know, when I was 13, I got my first kit, and that's when everything changed. So it's really been about drums for me, for my whole life, man. That's just been what I was put here to do. My mom was a singer, but she wanted to play drums and she couldn't. So she says that that's what she asked for, was a drummer. So she got one.
her wish came true for sure, big time. So
Yeah.
what happened in high school? In high school, you had a unique high school experience where you were meeting some great players.
Oh yeah, man.
What was that like?
So I ended up going to middle school at a place called Walter Reed Middle School in Studio City. And there I met a guy by the name of Justin Morel. And he's a great guitar player, even at the time, very advanced, even when we were in middle school. This is like a guy that's just super genius, in schoolwork, already knew theory, just way ahead, right? So I met Justin, and so we started jamming. I started going to his house, and it would just be drums and guitar. And we'd just be playing. He had all this MIDI stuff, man. He was composing, writing. So it was just like we were already there. And I was way into hip hop too. So it was just an instant connection. So then we found a keyboard player. And that's why sometimes people say, somebody's in your life for a reason or a season or whatever. So we found a keyboard player, and the keyboard player suggested this bass player. So the bass player comes over, and the four of us were a group for a short time. The bass player's name was Mike Elizondo. Now the keyboard player kind of phased out, and we replaced him with a trumpet player whose name is John DeVersa. So those guys were a couple years ahead of me, like 1 year, and then like 2 years. So we ended up meeting in middle school. I was still in middle school. They were starting high school. But that first time I got an opportunity, we decided we'd all go to the same high school. So for 1 year, we were all together at Hamilton High School. This is right after Abe Laborio Jr. left. And I went in the jazz band in his place because he graduated. And we were all there for 1 year together. And then I was there for 2 years with John and Justin. So through that period, we started recording. We just got popular around school, and that, we did gigs for the school, a lot of gigs for the school, representing the school, because it was like the center for music in LA. So, we did a lot of things for the school board and competitions and what have you. And it was just really a great experience. My first band I was in, and we're all still friends. And Mike and I are very, very close friends. He was my best man at my wedding. And, we're all just friends all these years later. John runs the music department or the jazz department. Excuse me if I'm saying this wrong, but one of the departments of music John runs at University of Miami. And then Justin is also a PhD. He's a professor at a school in Pennsylvania. And Mike is just one of the greatest producers of modern times, especially when you look at people that have cross genres. That's Mike over there on the left, one of my greatest friends, and just a huge inspiration because he's one of the most amazing bass players. We've been in sessions before, and we'll be in other parts of the studio. We'll do this just to mess with people. We can play whole notes probably for a minute without seeing each other. You know what I'm saying? Like just count it off, and then we'll just be locked in. Because he was like, the longest time I've spent with a bass player, we just have a certain connection. So whenever we do records together, it's always fun. And even that picture that you just showed, that was when right before James Corden took over, there was a gap at the Late Late Show. So John Mayer hosted it that week. So we actually we played behind him, and Ed Sheeran was the guest. So we did like a trio thing with Ed Sheeran. And then not too long after that, Mike ended up producing a very big song on Ed Sheeran called Galway Girl. And I played drums on that. And, that at the time had broke some, streaming records on YouTube, just ridiculous, like in the billions or something. So, it's just this thing. Mike and I, we've been on a lot of records together over the years, from stuff with Dre and M to things like that, to Hamilton stuff. I mean, just, whenever we can, we work together, especially now with the, back and forth, sending files. We were lucky enough to play together for a while, a few years ago, in the thing that came on NPR called Live From Here with the incredible mandolin player, Chris Dealey. Yeah, we did that together for a while, man. And that was a blast. So, it's just all that coming out of that little band, man. You know, we remember being in a bed truck riding to our first gig at a Boy Scout lodge, man. It's like it's just unbelievable. And then everybody stuck with it, man. So it's, you know, pretty amazing to see, you know, 30 years later.
Those relationships really bond together at such a high level.
Yeah.
As long as they are. But you also got 2 scholarships, one from Capitol Records and one from ASCAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
After high school, which then took you to college at USC. Is that where you ended up?
Yeah, so I went to it's so ironic because I'm with BMI, so I was not too loyal, but and Mike got this award the year before me. So Capitol they had their award, so they gave you a scholarship, so that was awesome. And then they had the Lever and Stoller Award from ASCAP, which he won, and then I won as well. And but then because my dad where he was, I always knew BMI, so I went to BMI, as far as my performing rights go. But it was still awesome. And then I did go to SC for a few years. Then I transferred to Cal Arts after that, and then I finished the time that I was going to finish at Cal Arts. And then I remember sitting with Joe LaBarbera, who's a dear friend and great teacher,
great player.
Yeah. And we're sitting with Joe, and we were just starting that semester's lessons, and I get a call, and it's Terry Lewis from Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis saying, "Hey, man, you playing on this session for this record. We want you to go on tour with them." And that was it. I was gone. So the way of, mostly you see it with people that go to Berkeley, but, that was it. And then I came back. I came back after that tour a couple years later, and went a couple more years or a year and a half. And then I finally checked out and was like, you know what, I'll check this out later and see what happens. And it worked out.
So at this point, you start touring, you start doing sessions, you were also giving some lessons. You were really kind of putting everything together at the same time.
Yeah, my first sessions really, I know it sounds crazy, but I was around 15, and I was doing I did an artist named Vinx that was on a label with Sting. And I remember doing his album. And then I did the original theme for the pilot of Martin Lawrence Show back then, which was a new show. This is 1990 we're talking. I don't think it got used, but that was another thing where I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I remember because of some of the relationships with my dad, I didn't really have a great supply of drums. I mean, I had a few snare drums, a few whatever, but I really wanted to be a session guy, and I would see what the real guys did. Right. So I have to say, this is something else that was very instrumental and influential to me in something that I do the same way. Before I had great drums, Harvey Mason used to let me use his Gretsch to do sessions. And, that was at that time, man, that was just unbelievable because it was like the greatest sounding drums at the time. Right. And without any issue, he would let me use his drums. I would just take care of the cardies. I'd bring my own snares, my own cymbals. And, that kind of thought process as a community, that just doesn't exist enough today. Right. And it's like that was super influential. And, we run into each other all over the world at different festivals and stuff, man. And it's just like every time I see him, I thank him for that because, it just made me feel like, yeah, we got you, man. We want you to be successful, not, oh man, it's just about me. I want to cut down all the ladders behind me so you can't climb. Like that energy is not existing enough today. So I try myself to put that in energy out because we got a lot of selfish stuff happening, especially on the internet. And, that's just not the way we succeed as a tribe or as a community.
Or just in humanity itself. I mean, yeah. Sometimes when I read many of the posts and people's opinions and negativity that's on social media, I start to really question the direction of humanity. Where are people going? Why is the need for this negativity and this ugliness? It's such a shame. In the music industry, all the music is about promoting love and happiness and joy. So it's an interesting time that we live in.
No, you're right. Absolutely, man. And it's like, it's just a thing where I'm trying to just do it by example, what I mean? And maybe somebody will catch on. I mean, there's definitely people that, I've talked to years later and, that go on to do things. And it just makes you feel good that somebody, saw where you were and took it to heart and helped them, because I don't want to destroy anyone. I want people to win. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, a lot of people just have a weird energy. I get trolled a lot. There's a particular drummer, I won't mention his name, but he trolls a lot of people. And, I've had to have a few words with him, and it wasn't the same energy in person. But, online, there's a lot of trolling, a lot of stuff. So, there's no real place for that. You know what I'm saying? We need to like, get rid of that. That's a very insecure, just not a good energy. It's very, not even just insecure, but, just, I don't know, another word for young, it's just like.
It's also immature.
There you go. Immature. Yeah.
It's also low values,
Yeah.
Values like integrity and gratitude. Those words are such an important word to live our lives with. And when people lower the bar the way they do with this level of immaturity, they just disrespect integrity. They disrespect respect, accountability. All these great words go out the freaking window.
Absolutely.
With this level of immaturity. But in 1994 is when you hooked up with Dr. Dre.
Yep.
How did that start out?
That was crazy, man. So let me tell you something. And just let me preface this, and you've already mentioned it. My whole thing is about relationships, man. And we learn that as we get older. That's really what all of this is about. And I put out a record in 2017 called Relationships for that very reason. So I met Dre in 1994. This is right at the end, as we know now, since we've seen the movie, at the end of Death Row, but he was still there at the time, and he was going to do a black heavy metal band. So he had auditions. So I go to the audition, and I played, and, he turned on the click, get an MPC there. He turned on the click, and I played to the click, and, that was just the audition. So I was told, oh, you got it. Don't worry. Everything went great. Wonderful. And, then as we know, history happened. He left Death Row. So it never happened. Okay, cool. But when he started doing other things with his new company, whatever, he remembered me, so he would call me for sessions. So that's how our relationship started, doing sessions. And then that was 94. And then like 96, he had put out his first record on his new company, and he invited me to go do Saturday Night Live with him. So that was my first in SNL. And then 2 years later, he put out the record that a lot of us know, Chronic 2001, and he invited me back to do SNL with him. So that's really how it all started. You know what I mean?
But then you kind of became a part of his production team, right?
Right. So there's a 10-year gap between that. So that's 1998 by the time we do the second SNL. Right. And it was just, random sessions here or there, just, certain things, birthday party. I was in his mind as a drummer. We connected like that, right? So that was 98 all the way up until about 2008. Is when it started really being on the production side, because I hadn't really shown what I do on that side up until then. And, it worked out to where we were in the studio one day, and he heard a beat and he kind of liked it. And from that part on, not that particular thing came out, but from that point on, at least, I had that look from him, and it was about showing improving, and then a year after that, which was even later that year in 2008, we went and started working with Eminem, and that's when everything changed.
Well, it's kind of interesting. You really have won and have been noted on so many different awards: Grammys, Emmy, Billboard, BET, Soul Train Awards, and all these nominations. I mean, you really are being recognized as one of the profound leaders in the music industry, and fortunately, you play drums. So, I mean, you're really opening doors that were never really open before for drummers.
Well, I'll say, I the awards and all that, I love it. Obviously I'm always a person that is a collaborator. So, it's always for the music and for the artist, but I do love being a collaborator and part of these things. Right. So, trust me, even with my whole CV and everything, it's tough for me to even approve all that stuff, because I'm so, it's not really about me, it's about the songs. But, I am a contributor, and that is just the reality. So yeah, it's fun to be a part of that. Do I live for it? No. 90% of the records I have, I don't try to go get plaques for them or anything like that. The music lives. That's what I do it for. You know what I mean? I think it's about, for me, it's about pushing forward, because all the greatest people that I've been able to be around in my life, that's their mentality, is what's next, push forward, you know, from the Herbies and the Dre's and the Stevies. And it's about pushing forward. You know, it's not all about just let's talk about the past. So personally, I love it. I respect it. I appreciate it. But I'm always trying to figure out what the next thing is going to be. You know what I mean? And you know, right now the educational thing came around, and that's been great because, you know, once again, I want to see the equality of hip hop, and, you know, especially as a viable genre. We can still go to school and get degrees in jazz and in classical music, which have been around for generations and centuries, but the most popular music is hip hop. So we need to be able to get a degree, a major or minor in that as well, because you have far more chance getting a job that can sustain you in the hip hop industry than the jazz industry.
Yeah.
If we're being honest.
Yeah.
And if we're being quantifiable, if we're quantifiably speaking, hip hop surpassed rock and roll in 2017 as far as album sales.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
it's huge, and it's such a part of American culture that
absolutely.
This is you know, this is what we have to accept, and what is, which is fantastic music. You know, we have people that are listening, Trevor, from all around the world here. We've got a couple of questions here that I'd like to bring up. Chad, if you would, Chad Brandolini, just bring up Simon McCurry, Simon's a wonderful drummer who is originally from Denmark, who has some lessons with me, and he lives up in upstate New York, and he's a wonderful teacher and player. He says, which tracks would Trevor say are the best at representing his playing? Thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you for that question. You know what, man? It just all depends on what type of playing, you know, you're speaking with. You know, there's some stretching on my album, Relationships, but if you want to talk about just session work, any of the records, you know, that will come up online from, you know, any of the artists I work with, you know, my first #1 record that I'm a writer on, I also play drums on, and that's called Crack a Bottle by Eminem. And the majority of that is live drums. So, you know, people may think it's programmed, but it's live drums. And, you know, there's a real laid back, you know, push pull hi-hat drum pattern that's going. So people may have thought it was a drum machine, but that's actually, you know, me playing. Man, I'm not going blank, but I would say some of those sites like All Music or Discogs, I mean, they've got everything that people do. You can look me up and there's a lot of records there. You know, as far as stretching goes, you know, I haven't made a lot of jazz albums, but with people, I mostly, you know, do hip hop or pop or R&B or country or whatever. So for that, any of those records that are listed for the sessions you can check out. But if you want to hear a little stretching, you could go to my album Relationships for sure.
You know, you have, I printed out the list of just albums. and I did this, and there's no doubt that they got to knock down a couple trees just because of the paper that I used to print this freaking thing. It's so, you know, for I mean, first of all, recently the you know, the #1 U.S. Billboard charts, the album Speak Now with that latest one is it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, that was an amazing movie called One Night in Miami.
Yeah.
And, you know, Leslie and the Camp are great, and he's an amazing artist, man. This guy is like, to me, he's the modern day Nat King Cole, you know, Sammy Davis Jr., all those people, because he can really sing, he can really act, and he can, you know, dance, and he's a statesman, you know, just very polished guy, right? So Leslie's amazing. So we've worked together a few times, and being a part of that, because of the movie that it was in, you know, that was directed by Regina King, was an amazing movie, One Night in Miami. Yeah. It was nominated for Oscar. So, you know, that was kind of cool to be a part of that, man. You know. Then
also in this year, In the Heights with Lin Miranda. I mean, this is
yeah. Those guys, Lynn and Alex, shout out to you. They are killing it, and obviously we know Hamilton changed the whole genre of Broadway, but they're just killing it. So, you know, and that was also with Mike. Once again, we were able to work on that together, man. And, you know, it was awesome to be a part of something like that. I just now really saw it too on the plane a couple of weeks ago, so it was cool to be a part of that,
Well, then you talk about drum programming, and this one I kind of liked. Mariah Carey, "I Only Wanted." I mean, that
Yeah.
was, as far as drum programming, that's a whole
Right.
nother skill level that's huge.
Yeah, that was quite a while ago. But that was I did a few things with her on a few different albums. And like I said, when the definition of the word producer now is a lot different than it was back in the day, right? In the 80s, what a lot of us do as production now, or people that consider themselves producer would have been considered programmers in the 80s. So I'm glad that that's also a huge step on where we've come as far as our contributions, right? So the programming thing, it's synonymous for me. It's synonymous my whole career with drums, because that's where we are. So I never wanted to be boxed in. So in order not to be boxed in, you have to have a few different skills, right? Like a person that speaks multiple languages, you have more opportunities. So, I just embraced the technology early on, and I am a proponent of technology, and I utilize it as much as I can, and it allows you to get in certain circles and certain rooms where there are no drums, right? There are not drums in every room, mic'd up, ready to go, but there can be drums in your backpack with you in every room.
Absolutely. Look at this. This is like,
oh man, yeah. Those, shout out to my people at Universal Audio. I've been dealing with them, believe it or not, since before Apollos. So they're my crew. They have a couple plugins, the Neve 1073 and the Neve 1084, in which I have my settings in the folder. So shout out to Universal Audio. They've been real big supporters and great friends over the years.
So there's so many, with you on drums, with Ed Sheeran, Galway Girl. I mean, there's just so many great. I want people to go out there and just do the research of all the different albums that you've done, and you showcase a wide variety of your ability to be able to adapt to the music and the artists that you're dealing with. That's something which is a very unique skill, that you have that chameleon type of skill.
Yeah.
To give them exactly what
no pun intended, chameleon. But yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, man, I feel like the question that was asked, that's what I want to portray. Like, the best way to hear me is the fact that you didn't even know it was me on so many different genres. And I think that comes with that whole, I don't want to get boxed in energy, because, oh yeah, he's a that guy or he's a that guy. I don't like that, man. I feel like we can be Renaissance people. We can do multiple things, right? It's not, because once again, for a piano player, a guitar player, it's nothing. Nobody, oh, the keyboard player, he could play country, he could play this. It's not a big deal. But for us, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you can do more than one thing. So, so it's like, I've just been on a mission to not be typecast or put in the box, So shout out to Leanne Rhymes, that's my homie, and the crew. We've done a lot of records together and touring together. And, she featured on my relationships album, just relationships, man, and different music. But Dom, as you know, it's not by osmosis. We had to put some work in.
We got to put some serious time into it. Speak about, in the real estate industry, the three most important things are location, location, location.
Exactly.
In the music industry now, which you have proven, Trevor, is the three most important things are relationship, relationship, relationship. It really is that way.
And being prepared.
And being prepared and being a professional too. We have another question here too. Chad, let's bring another question up in here from Eva. Relationships was a pleasant surprise. What's next?
I have an album in the can. I'm actually in the middle of getting it remastered right now, and it's a shock because I said, I've never really done a jazz album, so I did an actual jazz album. Really, traditional jazz, with strings and some horns. It's really came out really good. So I'm just waiting to drop that. There's some other things I'm waiting on, but it'll definitely be out by February, if not before the end of the year. And it's called Hidden in Plain Sight. That's the name of the album. So, it's just there's some history, aspects to it, and some inner things in there, but that's the name of it, Hidden in Plain Sight.
Eva, thank you so much for the question. Hidden in Plain Sight. Fantastic. Chad, bring up another question from Reggie Sylvester.
Mhm.
How do you see the future of touring in 2022, next year?
I mean, I see it coming back, man. I mean, it's coming back. I mean, I've done some festivals. I just did Austin City Limits a few weeks ago with Leanne, and that thing was packed, man. You know, and that's festivals like twice the size of Coachella. So, you know, they're out there. You know, you're seeing there's just a lot of people had to. It just all came back at one time when we can get into each other's, you know, presence. So people were just trying to make up what they can and get back in order. You know, when you shut down the world of touring and music, man, that's a lot of demographic, you know, that's just a lot of logistics rather. And, you know, it's just taking time for people to get back, but it's starting to come back. I mean, I feel like it's starting to get back to where it was. I know out here in Los Angeles County, which is one of the larger counties, I mean, our transmission rate is really low. So I'm just feeling like things are going to start opening up. And I see it getting on the road to normalcy, you know, in 2022, you know what I mean? So that's the good thing. You know, I remember when I did the Democratic Convention, with a guy by the name of Leon Bridges, and it was literally just the camera crew and us, you know, and it was a pre-taped video that played during the convention. I mean, that's where things were, you know, a year ago, literally, right? So it's definitely not that anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit more, you know, starting to see a lot more tours and things happen. So that's positive. You know, I think we're headed back to normalcy.
Well, good for you. And I think what happens is when it finally comes back, it's going to come back with a vengeance. There's going to be touring all over the place. This is another question we have from Sergos Frutilis, who's a phenomenal drummer, a student of mine also. He lives in the island of Rhodes in Greece.
Oh, nice.
Wonderful, wonderful player. He said, in hip hop, there are a lot of loops and samples. Do you feel comfortable drumming on these, or do you prefer playing without samples and loops? What do you feel about that?
So here's my philosophy with that. So if I'm going to do a session and there's a this is not when you're all tracking at once, but if I'm going to go do a session and there's something that was there in the first place, which is usually a loop or something, and that's what everyone else played to, well, I definitely want to hear that. And I'm going to lock to that because that's what everyone else locked to. So I'm going to add my thing on top of that and work with that. So then you'll have the option, okay, we can take this loop off or we can play with it. And, or we can keep Trevor on with the loop, or I'll play what I'm going to do. And then I'll go and recreate the loop as well so that they have it with the more modern drum sound. If, you know, it's all about options for me. When you see people with all these snare drums and all this, that's what I'm one of those guys because I learned from watching Kenny Arnoff and JR and Harvey and Ndugu. And, you know, yeah, I'm showing up to the session with multiple snare drums and options because if I need to go recreate a loop, I'm going to be able to do it, right? So I think it's not a blanket thing of do I like loops or not. I feel like if the loop was there to be the start off point for whatever music has been tracked, then I want to hear it so I can play with it. And a lot of times you have to play with it. That's, you know, people want you to lock up to that. So I just treat every musical situation as what's best for the music at that moment.
So you really have to have a lot of knowledge in all the gear, the studio equipment, the programs, other instruments, microphones. You've really got to be well versed in all of that.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna be honest. That's part of the whole thing that, you know, success is when preparation meets opportunity. So the relationships give us the opportunity, but if you're not prepared, it's going to just pass by you, right? So you're right. I spent a lot of time on the pro audio side as far as just, you know, microphones and preamps and what have you, and learning how to get a drum sound. Shout out to my people at Warm Audio. I deal with them a lot for pre's and mics, and they make incredible stuff that I use on all records in the last couple of years that I've been doing. As far as when people send me stuff, we're also in that generation. We're in that period. And last year, more than ever, you know, if you were able to record drums remotely, you may have had more opportunities to work, right? Because everything else was shut down. So I feel like knowing these DAWs, and when I say DAW, you know, for the people that don't know, digital audio workstation, Pro Tools to me is the tape machine. It's always going to be that. It hasn't been replaced yet as the tape machine, the predecessor of the modern tape machine.
Yeah.
I tend to record all my drums there. But you don't have to. Logic the same way. I tend to use Logic more for my programming in MIDI. And then what I really use for the majority of my programming in MIDI since about 2015 is Ableton Live. And, between those three, that's what I use. Now I'm in the process of learning another one called Luna that's made by Universal Audio, because sonically Luna is unbelievable. So I'm really trying to learn that. It's very new, so they're doing updates and what have you. But I'm working on Luna in the background because I'm eventually going to try to have that be where I record my drums, right?
What have they done differently with sonically to improve it?
You know what? It's just one of those things where the DAWs definitely have personalities, right? I mean, a lot of it has to do with your hardware, right. Your clocks and your preamps and your interfaces. But a lot of us already use universal audio interfaces, right? So Apollo. So if you're using Apollo, for some reason the sound, it was just unbelievably higher quality than everything else with the same setup. And the first time I heard drums come back through that, I said, okay, this is crazy. So I really want that to be my go-to, because like I said, now with the remote sessions, people don't care, what you're cutting it on. They just want the files back, right? So, but they all have great characteristics. Even, Studio One, all my people over Personas, they've got an incredible platform over there, Studio One, that has incredible time stretching and compression expansion. Everyone has their thing, and everyone can do the same thing. So it really becomes preference, right? And I feel like the universal language is for Pro Tools, so that's always going to usually be where I end up. But even over the last 3 years, more and more, now people just want the actual files. Right. They don't even care about, sending them the session. They want the files mostly. So, however you get there, man, just make sure everything is not distorted and out of phase.
this is preparation at its best, which is a real testimony to your research and your desire to want to keep learning, which is really that's an important aspect that I want everyone to understand. That's how you are, Trevor. You're just constantly looking and learning and experimenting and researching. It's huge.
And we have there, and there's friends. I have friends that are in this, and so we have our conversations, and it's like that whole iron sharpen iron, steel sharpen steel. It takes a village. That whole vibe. I have certain friends that are musicians, producers. We have home studios. Not everyone plays drums, but we still speak about this on a regular basis. And it's like, oh, what about that? Oh, I didn't know about that, bro. Let me go look up. Look it up. It's like, oh my God, this is it's nerdy, you can say, but man, that's part of, that's another part of it.
Part of the 21st century music industry for sure. And when you say steel sharpens steel, the aspect, it's man that sharpens man. And that's how we all have to work together to learn more and sharpen each other.
Absolutely. I firmly agree with that.
Let's go to Stevie Wonder. Your parents were in Stevie Wonder. You started working with Stevie Wonder. What the heck was that like?
Man, you know what? I got to be honest. It wasn't even something I really was expecting, but one day I got a call from my uncle who had worked with him for many years on the PR side. And he was just like, hey, man, Stevie may be looking for a drummer. I suggested you should go down and check him out. So I went down to Wonderlove, the studio, the famous studio he had on Western. And man, I had met him and stuff, but it wasn't like we spoke all the time, right? So I went down and then, man, we jammed. And the first thing he wanted to start doing is playing Giant Steps as fast as we could play it. So I was like, oh, let's go there. Cause I didn't really say in the beginning, see, I came from jazz. I didn't come from church playing. I came from jazz. So I'm a jazz guy first. So swinging, it's like, that's my thing. So I was like, yeah, we can do that all day, So we start burning out playing Giant Steps, and I'm trying to play my, my most intricate, let me see you come back on one on this, We're going there, back in the day, they called it cutting session, we were going there. So yeah. And then after briefly, by the way, let me just hear a little pocket on Superstition. Without, that was like kind of the afterthought, like, oh yeah, we'll get to that. Right. So after that, it went well. And so he called me, and I think my first gig with him was Africa. My first gig with him was like Ghana or something. And so I get over there, and mind you, I had grown up with a lot of people because my dad used a lot of the musicians in that world while he was producing in the 80s. So like his bass player, Nate, that's Uncle Nate. So, he used to hold me in his arms at one point, right? So, Nate, I see Nate out there. We're in Ghana, and I'm like, man, I got all these songs on my iPod. What's the set list? He said, let me see that. It's like 250 songs. Like, yeah, it could be any of those. So I'm sitting there like, man, what's going on? I mean, obviously I had heard some show tapes. I think I did at that point. And then, we got through the show, man, and it was cool. And, then it just kept being, just started doing gigs, and then that one gig happened, that Live 8 gig happened, which was ironic because my grandfather and all my Fly to the Family's from Philly. So that was in Philly, and it was 1 million people live, 1 million people there, So, and by the way, there's video of this on YouTube. I got shut down mid-plane in front of 1 million people because there was a set list and there was a song that he had to cue the playback. So, he had some hand signals. So when he did his hand, I thought he went going to the next song. So I went in, that, get him, that. And he's no. And it was the cue the sound man for the song. So, dude, I got shut down in front of 1 million people, man. And it's living forever on YouTube, but that was a great experience, man. And, we went on to play after that. I played on his album, that last album he has put out. He hasn't really put out one since then. And that was great, another bucket list thing, man. And so, it was just one of those things where it came full circle, you know what I mean? Because he's really my godfather. It's not like we're that close, but he's always been my godfather with me growing up. So it was just crazy because my grandfather was one of his influences. So I would see him every so many years by my grandfather, his group, that he'd buy their vans that they would drive all over the country and sing quartet gospel music in, So it was just a real full circle moment between my family and, Stevie with yet another generation. He's, connected to my family. So I'll never forget that, man.
What a beautiful scenario. It really, really is. Tell me about Cal State. Are you being a professor there and teaching there?
Yeah. So somebody you mentioned, Andrew, shout out to Andrew and Jeff and all the guys there. So a few years back, ironically, we started talking about, first of all, let me preface it. My wife works in the theater department. So I started talking to them just about music in general and the program. And, because I am on the technical side, we can have that conversation and just in the mix with a few things. So we just started talking a few years back, way before the pandemic or anything, about putting some things together with the program. And I was going to do that. And then the pandemic hit and, we know what happened. Everything got shut down. So coming out of the pandemic, Andrew and the crew, they just said, hey, man, there may be availability with this hip hop class. Would you be into teaching? And I said, sure. So we put everything together and we made it happen. And it's really been cool. And I have like 102 students, and it's been all Zoom, obviously now. Hopefully next semester, if everything works out, it'll be in person. But I mean, and I polled everybody in the beginning because I wanted to see who I was talking to. And it's mostly non-musicians. So it's probably like 90% non-musicians. So I like that better because they're getting some of this stuff the first time. You know what I mean? And it's really amazing to see how they are responding to some of this information. And, we've had some cool dialogues and I know they learned certain things that they didn't, like Vanilla Ice wasn't the first person to say word to your mother, certain things like that. And, I started them in 1979 with Rapper's Delight because that's the first charting hip hop song. So 1979 Rapper's Delight, Sugar Hill Records is kind of our jump off point. And a lot of people don't know, in August, Congress passed, August is National Hip Hop Appreciation Month. August 21st is National Hip Hop Day. And the month of November, which we're coming up on, is National Hip Hop History Month. And a lot of people didn't catch that because we have so many news cycles going. It fell under the radar. But, essentially taking them from the beginning of hip hop and seeing that this is where we are in 21, and you see the Super Bowl, announcement that's been made. first hip hop halftime show. How many years have we had the Super Bowl? It's just amazing that we're seeing this art form go from infancy into, you know, the most popular art form. And we're now kind of seeing the graduate part of it. It's like we're seeing people now that are in hip hop that people have grown up being fans of them, right? And they're still around. So that's similar to what happened in jazz and at one point classical. You know, we're seeing now people that are in their 40s and 50s that were hip hop fans when it was a new genre, and now they're grandparents, right? So I just think it's an amazing time to be a part of hip hop, man, and to see what's, you know, what's really going on.
Well, it's amazing that now as you teach it, which is so great, and Andrew Sermani is a dear friend also at the school.
Mhm.
State is just fantastic. So having you there is an important part of history of this next generation to understand where it all came from and how they can then prepare themselves to be the next producers, musicians, or whatever they choose to do within that genre. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that it's awesome that the school is recognizing hip hop in the way that they are. You know, my dream is to one day have a minor or major in hip hop be available, because, you know, it's just a validation, you know, of the art form, and the fact that, yeah, it's a real career that you can literally go make a career in various aspects of it. You don't have to be the artist or the producer. There's business aspects, all that. So, you know, hopefully we'll see that one day, because I feel like far more people are interested in that. There are a lot of people that don't go to college because they don't have something like that. They say, I'll just go in the real world and try to see what happens, right? Well, imagine if you had an institution that actually welcomed those people. You know, I mean, look at my class. You got 102 people. I'm a new teacher. It wasn't, you know, I'm not some authored academia guy. You know, I'm a new teacher that they came and they're interested in taking this class because of the information. So multiply that by a whole university, you never know what's possible. So I appreciate them for being forward thinkers in that regard.
Boy, they really are. And hip hop, like jazz, is an American-based music that is an important part of our culture that needs to be taught. It needs to be explained. It needs to be understood. So this is really, really forward thinking. But I got to say something. It was recently announced that you're back with Vader.
Oh, yeah.
Relationship with them, and it's exciting that you're back, and you're using the Vader Classic 5A and the Vader Fusion Acorn. Just talk about those sticks.
So, yeah, so my original sticks I was using with Vader back in the day were the Acorns. I think I may have been there even before they came out, but I remember as soon as they came out, that was like my stick for years, especially back in the day when I was playing with Snoop, like 2007-ish. Always had a great relationship with them, with Chad, all the people over there. You know, who knows why people go around and, you know, go to different companies and all that. I don't know. I look at myself sometimes like, what are you doing? So it's like I'm back home. This is where it is. This is where I literally dropped the sticks, is with Vader. And, you know, they just make incredible, consistent stuff, you know. And, you know, at the end of the day, though, we have to be honest that it's not only about the equipment. What is it about, Don? We've already been talking about it. The relationships. It's like, you know, when you have a person in place or people in place that know how to have a relationship, it's just great things happen. When you become a number and you become, you know, I don't know, you know, there's certain energies that happen in some places, and it's just not conducive to be successful. And for me, I found that I rather have the relationship than, you know, just what seems to be the flash, you know, and it's always worked out. I've been with Remo since I was 15, you know, DW for nearly 20 years, you know, Istanbul Agop approaching 10 years, if not 10 years. So, you know, man, it might be, it might be over 10 years now. So, you know, I'm just saying, you know, the relationship thing is real important. And Vader, they always are kind of just pushing the envelope in that stick world, and the stuff just feels great, you know. And Chad and I have had some incredible experiences. I'm going to share a story, a backstory. I had left to do a signature somewhere with another company, and something was weird with the lacquer. So I'll never forget, I was getting ready to be in Norway to do the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm like, Chad, listen, bro, these sticks are flying out of my hand, bro. I can't do this. Man, don't you know, there was a box that met me in Oslo, Norway, of Vader's, bro. Like that right there was like, okay, this is different. And yeah, there it is. That's me at the Nobel Peace Prize platform. So, you know, those type of relationships are really important. And I think that people now with the internet, you know, they don't really have a clear idea on how that dynamic should happen. I did write a book on that called Musician's Pocket Guide to Endorsements. But you know, yeah, man, Vader, it feels great to be back here. And you know, we're gonna have some fun things happening and some great opportunities, man. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of those, you know, in the near future.
Fantastic. Well, Trevor, I thank you so much for your time and your incredible stories, man. You've got such a rich history in this music industry, and you really are at the cusp of pushing this industry forward in all different aspects and all the different hats that you're wearing. So TrevorLawrenceJr.com is the website. Everybody go by there and check it out. Any questions you have, you can send them along to Trevor, and this will be fantastic, Trevor. Thank you so much. Stay safe. And I look forward to, if I get out to the West Coast, we'll get together for sure.
Dom, thank you so much, man. You've been a great interviewer, man. Chad, everybody at Vader, thank you. Can I leave my Instagram too?
Please. What is it?
My Instagram is Trevor Lawrence Jr. So at Trevor Lawrence Jr. I'm real active on Instagram as well. And you know, like I said, it's been great talking with you, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks. I want everyone to go by there and go to the Instagram account, which I'm going to do right now. Follow it. Keep in touch with what's happening with Trevor. Trevor, thank you so much. Stay well. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. You as well.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Incredible to have this opportunity with Trevor here. I mean, he's just such an incredible gentleman, and he's got integrity. Integrity is tattooed on his arm. The word integrity, that's how deep he is when it comes down to being a person that has just great character. I thank you all for joining us. You can watch this again back on Facebook and on YouTube. Stay in touch, and we'll see you real soon at Vader.com. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.